Hello, it's just David here with my weekly message. Um, so at the end of this week, we end in the church the Easter season with the feast of Pentecost. Um, Sometimes people call it Whit Sunday, the time that the Holy Spirit comes on the disciples. They've waited prayer and quietness, if you like, and then they receive the Holy Spirit in the Acts of the Apostles. Um, and we have something in the church which you might have seen, Thy Kingdom Come, which is the Church of England initiative. Um, but actually, I mean, although it's ancient. So I mean, because they sort of devoted themselves to that day of quiet prayer after the ascension, the 10 days between the ascension and then the coming of the Holy Spirit. So it's just promoting really the ancient idea that actually that's a time for the church to pray. In particular, I mean, of course, the church always prays, but particularly to have a time of prayer, 10 days, and particularly wait for the gift of the Holy Spirit. And Pentecost is often thought of as the birthday of the church, the time that the Holy Spirit arrives. So that's a little bit of context. But my thought this morning is about the biblical accounts of Pentecost. I mean, do read it, and you'll hear it read in church from Acts of the Apostles. I want to think about it in terms of the restrictions that we've been through. If you look at the description in Acts, it's quite a dramatic uh, time, if you remember, and it's slightly odd the way kind of Luke narrates it, because at the beginning of the sort of passage, it seems that the disciples are gathered together quietly, and by the end of it, he seems to be speaking to a great crowd. So, not quite sure what happens. But somehow a crowd gathers during the events, I suppose, which is not unlikely. And of course, it's very dramatic events. There's talks of tongues of flame, great wind rushing through the place, and then this way of what's called technically xenolalia, which is the ability to, well, to speak, but then for those in the audience, if you like, to hear it in their own tongue, because we're told that there's a great list of nations, and they all seem to hear the message that it's Peter that's speaking, that Peter says in their own tongue. So it's quite dramatic, and it has a crowd, and I just wondered how that feels after 18 months of these restrictions. I don't know about you. I've sort of, I mean, I'm looking forward to opening up, and I'm one of those people who hopes that things relatively easily gets back to normal. Well, we probably all do. Um, but I still, when I watch sort of things on television where there's lots of, crowds gathering and stuff, even, a film that's shot, 10, 15 years ago, I still sort of think, oh goodness me, should they, oh, that's a bit, dodgy. Should they be that close? And of course, it's just because, as I say, the film was made in 1975 or something. So, but there is that feeling when you sort of, even just reading that bit of all these people gathered from all the different nations again, when we're not really able to cross many borders, um, and it all feels a bit kind of odd, in a sense. They're allowed to do this. Um, and as I say, perhaps you're somebody who's looking forward to getting back to some of those things. But also, we get used, don't we, to, in a sense, life being quite quiet. I mean, yesterday I had a day off. Did go out. You'll be unsurprised now, for a bike ride. But we realise, Jessie the dog really loves uh, lockdown, because actually, yeah, most of the day, we're sitting around with her, and she's very sort of happy. I don't know what she'll think when we sort of start going out to far more things. I say all this because actually there are almost two Pentecosts in the Bible. There is that one in the Acts of the Apostles that we always think of, but there's also one in John chapter 20. And again, well, not again. This it's almost as though it's made as a complete contrast to Luke's account. Now, those questions are, why are there two different events? Um, this one's very different, if you remember. It is, I mean, Jesus is still around for a start. This is a sort of post-resurrection appearance. He appears to the disciples and he breathes on them and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." So there's this double memory in the church about, you know, the reception of the Holy Spirit being a time, Jesus actually gives it to them in the Johannine version before the ascension, very quietly. Same quiet, it just comes through his breath. To then this sort of dramatic and crowded account post ascension in Luke, in Acts, with tongues of flame and all the rest of it. Now, obviously, there are kind of questions which have been asked, since those accounts are written. Are they two different events? Are they different members of the same event? Are they, are they just sort of different times when the Holy Spirit is given? We don't really know, and I think I want to just sort of leave that for the moment. I think the point I want to make at the moment is how different they are, and perhaps whatever other confusion there might be in having two accounts of Pentecost, the advantage of it is that it gives us, if you like, two pictures of how the Holy Spirit works. And perhaps sometimes, the Acts of the Apostles is the dominant one. The Holy Spirit's this dramatic thing. It's about wind and flame and fire, and it's all a bit extrovert, and there's crowds and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. I mean, I've been at things like that, which is absolutely sort of terrific, and there can great fun in those times and great excitement. But also, then the thing about the Johannine, the John's version, is just how quiet it is. I mean, it is simply Jesus with his disciples, very quiet. There's no crowd, there's no wind, there's no flame. It's so quiet that actually just his breath is the thing. Receive the Holy Spirit that he gives. And so there also is the idea that sometimes the Holy Spirit may be something that we find alone, or with two or three friends, that there will be no spectacular signs, that there will be no wind or tongues of flame, no great excitement. There may just be, it may just be as gentle as a breath coming upon us. There may be just a particular place when we kneel to pray or look at a landscape, and suddenly there will just be that moment when the Spirit is with us. And I think, as I say, I think having those two contrasting pictures is great. And yeah, so, and I don't think, one of them is right and one of them is wrong. I think the Holy Spirit, operates in both those ways, and that's good to have those contrasts. And I think perhaps actually at the moment when, in the sense of, restrictions and, we can't do this, we can't do that, and we haven't been able to, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to do a bit more soon. But, in that feeling of not being able to do this, not, the Pentecost at the moment in the Acts version couldn't happen. Just to be reassured actually that, even if we are just sitting on the sofa with the dog in the evening, the Holy Spirit can come upon us in the most profound way. I think that's quite important and reassuring to know at this time, that during the 18 months the Spirit has been there. He hasn't said, oh, there's no great crowd, there's no Parthians and whatever the other ones were, Cretans and Arabs and that great list. Oh, I can't operate, I can't do one of my spectaculars. I think the Spirit just says, yeah, you're alone, I will come like breath upon you. So, Pentecost, next Sunday, two pictures of the gift of the Holy Spirit. Very contrasting. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are, if you're quiet, isolated, or in a huge cloud, the Holy Spirit will still do its work. Thank you.